Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Sudan's deputy head of state returns home after a week-long trip to Moscow that began on the eve of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Khartoum appears to be cementing ties with the Kremlin as international calls for its isolation mounts. Also, nationals from Tunisia and Ghana who fled Ukraine have finally made it home, with others set to follow. Tens of thousands of Africans have been stranded in the war-torn country since Russia attacked last week. And I speak to award-winning Ugandan writer Kakwenza Rukirabashaija. He's filed a case against Uganda in the East African Court of Justice. He was tortured over tweets in which he called the president's son obese and a curmudgeon. But first, Sudan was amongst the 35 countries that abstained during Wednesday's UN General Assembly vote calling for an end to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and a withdrawal of troops. Meanwhile, Eritrea was amongst only 5 countries that supported the Kremlin. Now, the EU's been pressuring Khartoum to stand with the international community's denouncing of Russia's military aggression. But Sudan's ruling council appears to have been deepening ties with Moscow. Its deputy head of state returned on Wednesday from a week-long trip to Russia. Our correspondent, Caroline Kimeo, tells us more.
The EU delegation met with representatives of Sudan's military-led Sovereignty Council on Sunday, calling for Sudan to join the international community in affirming Ukraine's territorial sovereignty and calling for Russia to be held accountable for its violations of international law. However, Sudan offered a more moderate response, saying instead through its acting foreign minister al-Sadiq that it supports dialogue between the two countries and a diplomatic resolution to the ongoing crisis. Now, military leader Mohammed Dagalo, better known as Hemeti, was in fact in Moscow when Russia launched its attacks on Ukraine. Representatives of the Sovereignty Council say that he was there for bilateral talks. The two countries do indeed have very strong political, economic and security ties. Russia as well was not very strong in coming out to speak out against the military coup in Sudan, which serves as an advantage to the current Sovereignty Council. Still, Sudan may be weighing its options here because it just only came out of the U.S. state sponsor of terrorism list in 2020, allowing it to rejoin the international community and gain some of the benefits that offers, including international financing, which the country badly needs at the moment. So therefore, it's at a bit of a sticking point where it will have to choose its stance very carefully.
Caroline Kamir there for us. Meanwhile, the rush to get Africans who had been living in Ukraine out of the war-torn country continues. For many, the journey out of Europe was a physical and psychological ordeal.
Reunited at last. The past week seemed endless for these Tunisian parents waiting for their children, students stranded in Ukraine as the country was attacked by Russia. When the first bombs fell last week, they raced to reach the border.
The situation was terrible during the last 3 days. There were sirens and bombs falling. We were scared.
We walked 50 kilometers. Some of our friends were hit. We witnessed racism. Food was only given to Ukrainians.
Tens of thousands of Africans lived in Ukraine when Russia launched its attack. Thousands have managed to cross the border to Poland, the Czech Republic, Romania, and Hungary. The first groups have returned home, like here in Ghana. Kenya, South Africa, and DRC are among the countries setting up charter flights from Europe. But many Africans are still a long way from home. This Nigerian student was caught in the conflict. His father breathes easy now that he's safe.
He's comfortable in Krakow, we're in Poland, and trying to get in touch with the Nigerian embassy and see probably what support they can provide.
Africans long settled in Poland have risen to the occasion, helping stranded refugees, especially after numerous testimonies of racism. The European delegation to Kenya denied member states have treated differently Africans. The UN has called on authorities to treat all those fleeing Ukraine with the respect they deserve.
Well, EU diplomats have slammed the son of Uganda's president for expressing support for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Lieutenant General Kakwenza Rukirabashaija retweeted this week that the majority of non-white mankind backs Vladimir Putin. The deputy head of the EU delegation in South Sudan hit back, saying that that comment was unacceptable. Now, Kakwenza is also at the centre of the recent global concern about Uganda's history of torture. Award-winning writer Kakwenza Rukirabashaija accuses Kakwenza of having personally ordered his detention and torture over some tweets in which the author called him obese and a curmudgeon. Rukirabashaija, who won the 2021 PEN Pinter Prize for International Writers of Courage, is currently in Germany, having fled after a month-long ordeal. This week, he filed a case against Uganda in the East African Court of Justice over his torture. He spoke to me earlier about the abuse that he suffered.
I was badly tortured to the extent that my captors used pliers to pluck flesh from my thighs. They used hippopotamus whips or wires to beat me, my back, my thighs. They are all riddled with dermatological ulcerations, as you have seen in the pictures. My ankles are all broken. The left one has a fracture from the beatings I sustained, by my captors from SFC.
Now, that seems like a lot of overkill for some tweets. It feels like it sounds like it was personal. Why do you reckon that they would go to such an extent for you expressing, admittedly, some unflattering opinions, but still opinions on tweets?
Since 2020, April 2020, when the state interested itself in my literature, they have come to the extent of giving me offers, political appointments, material possessions, and I have often turned it down. They mistook my criticism for maybe hunger, for maybe desperation. They thought that I speak up against impunity, against injustice, because I want a job or a position in government, or I want riches. I want to reach to that. I refused. So when I made flattering comments, actually I do not call it insult or abuse. I used literature to describe Mohozi's character, to describe his physical appearance. So I don't know why, if I say that he is obese, he takes it as an insult. So when I made such comments on Twitter, out of being a curmudgeon, out of being short-tempered, he ordered for my arrest, and he personally took charge in torturing me.
Now, you were charged with offensive communication and were before the court. Were you surprised that such trivial charges could go quite so far? What was the role of the judiciary in all of this?
First of all, the judiciary, they used, my captors used the judiciary. The magistrate who presided over my case abused my rights, or conformed with a dictator to abuse my rights, because the Human Rights Act, Anti-Torture Act, they are all clear. Once a suspect shows up in court when his or her rights have been abused, the magistrate or the presiding judge is supposed to stay the proceedings and first handle the human rights issue. But he ignored that. He instead sent me to prison on remand, in total disregard of my rights. So that means that he was co-opted, or he was under remote control to suppress my rights more.
Now, the government in the past has said that torture isn't really a problem in the country, and the spotlight on the issue that was ignited by what happened to you did actually send some opposition politicians walking out of Parliament. Do you think that anything is likely to change in the wake of the attention that's come with what you've been through?
I do not expect any change until when the Western governments, interest themselves in the human rights situation in Uganda. Because first of all, the relationship between the West and the Ugandan government should have common values, and human rights should take the first position. If the Ugandan government continues to violate human rights with impunity, I don't see the reason why it still receives support from European Union, from USA government, from British government. It's really bad. It looks like the Western governments, they are looking on as Museveni is violating the rights of Ugandans. So for us Ugandans to solve such a problem, we need to send Museveni away. We need to rise up and we send him packing, and we look for another leader who respects human rights.
Ugandan writer there, Kakwenza Rukirabashaija. Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.